After a successful decade run as a featured documentary, Eyes of the Mothman is now a podcast containing bonus information and, for the first time ever, the complete, unedited field interview tapes with eyewitnesses, experts, and those who were directly impacted by the Mothman incidents that occurred in Point Pleasant, West Virginia in 1966 and 1967. Although this podcast is meant to act as a historical record and an archive of the events that transpired, all material contained here is not for reproduction without the written consent by the copyright holder, Redline Studios Incorporated. Episode 24, this is our final and last episode dedicated to a raw interview tape. And that, last but not least, has got to be the godfather of Mothman, Jeff Wamsley. What a character, what a great guy. He is somebody who we've stayed in touch with for a long time, and really one of the main pinnacles of how this film came about and why it came about. One of my first points of contact down in West Virginia was Jeff. I have so much respect for Jeff and his family. They have been so kind to us, and really almost single-handedly. I know there's a lot of people that contributed, but really his family really made it their mission from my perspective to turn their town around. You know, you look at Point Pleasant, West Virginia, if you've explored it, and it's very much out there now. You know, once the Silver Bridge collapsed, the next bridge that was built in its place was built miles up the road. And so when you look at the region, Point Pleasant kind of becomes, what could have been a ghost town. There's not really a major excuse to travel there. It becomes a point of kind of like no return. It becomes a point that's not easily traveled. The old bridge that was there was a reason to go through the town. It was a reason to make your way through Main Street. It brought commerce there. It brought people through the town. So once that bridge got rebuilt, this town could have easily fallen to the wayside into shambles and become a ghost town. And I think the Wamsleys recognized that and saw that and also looked at the Mothman and maybe the negative stigma that was built around it and started to think, well, how can we, take lemons and make lemonade? And I think they started to change the perception of the town. I think that they looked at the Mothman legend. I've never heard Jeff try to convince me of what the Mothman is or was, but I think that they started to look at it as something to maybe celebrate and respect and not deny as part of their town's history, and really used it to have a positive impact on their town and community by starting the Mothman Festival and seeing what it's grown to today. I mean, Jeff, along with Carolyn Harris, were one of the first people to really start to try to reshape Point Pleasant to make it what it has become today, which is a major tourist attraction. I mean, it's crazy when you look at the size of the crowds that go out there for that festival.
Thinking back from when we first went, which was the second Mothman Festival, to, 20 years later now, it's there's thousands of people that when we were there, it was a few dozen maybe. Now it's
Donald
thousands.
Trump tweeted about the Mothman in the last couple of months or retweeted something that I believe, a Kentucky senator, or was it Kentucky or West Virginia? A politician put something out about Mothman recently, and Trump retweeted it. So, even Donald Trump is on Mothman's radar now.
But the thing is, I don't know who the mayor of Point Pleasant is, but Jeff Wamsley is the mayor of Mothman Town. He is the central figure of the myth of Mothman. He is the central point. Without him, you don't know if this thing is known. You don't have a statue in the city center of the Mothman. You don't have the festival. When we were there, we found out that the inventor, the designer of the original Jeep in World War II, went to West Virginia University, is from Point Pleasant, West Virginia. That is an incredibly important person. It's an incredibly important invention. It's an incredibly important tool that is a company that exists to this day. And it's important to America and American history. But the Mothman is more important in that town, is more well known, has a museum based around it. It's all because of him. He is the person, he is the generating force of this. He's the Steve Jobs of, he might not have invented it. He might not have witnessed it, but he's the reason that we all know what it is. And I wouldn't even know. I don't even know if we would have this film if it wasn't for him.
No, we wouldn't. And we wouldn't because we wouldn't have the access. We wouldn't have just everything that went into the film. Somehow, Jeff has some touch to it. He has some relation to it. The movie would not have been made possible by him. And then also, even more importantly, and it makes me feel good in that, like I care about what people like Jeff have to think about our film, because this is his town. This is where he grew up. It is the quintessential like small town thing. Again, I hate saying it because it sounds like a bad thing, but it's not. It's like, Jeff grew up there. He's proud of his town. He's happy that it's, getting revitalized. And so I value the fact that I know that he thinks very highly of our film forever. He's always said, like, when people come into our museum, your film is the one we give people to go, this is what we want you to know about us. And so that's important to me because it shows that we did a good job. And I know Jeff cares deeply about his town and his community. His family does. We've gotten to know them. They've helped us, beyond this project. We've gone back for other projects. He's always supported us. He's supported the arts. I mean, he is such a huge driving force of all of the prosperity that has happened in that town. And I'm happy. He's like just a fantastic guy. I have so many things that I can kind of relate to him with. My first job I ever had was working at a record store. Jeff used to own a record store down in Point Pleasant. He's always been an entrepreneur. He's always been a business person. And sometimes you meet people like that and they're driven by money and things like that and wrong intentions. And then sometimes people are driven by doing a good job and then have success because they have good intentions. And Jeff is like that kind of person. He's always, in my conversations with him, have been about like just helping his community, bringing it back to life, putting a positive spin on things. And so I'm happy that, his festival and his museum and all of his ventures have had success because I know it's coming from like a positive and healthy place.
Yeah. And talk about hands-on. You call up the Mothman Museum, who answers the phone? You could talk to him directly. And the other thing is we've done a lot of productions around the country. We've been to Indiana, we've been to Florida, we've been to Texas, we've been out to Reno, and we've been all over the country. And we've seen towns that I describe as zombie towns, where they should be a ghost town. They should be dead because they used to have an industry, and then industry went away a long time ago. But for some reason, the town still exists. The property value is very low. They're run down, and they haven't changed and built and expanded ever since that industry disappeared. And they still function, but not very well. They're zombie towns. And Point Pleasant could have easily been, and probably was for a while, a zombie town once that Silver Bridge collapsed. Their industry, which was trucking and travel and people stopping at that hotel and going to that diner because it was part of being on the road. And that went away. And it's the industry of Mothman that is the industry of that town now. And I mean, the fact that you can start a festival about an urban legend, if you will, and it went from, like, you remember, you were there for the second one.
Yeah, a couple hundred people to thousands.
Literally, I have been to tag sales, garage sales that had more people than that. And now it's an event. It is like, you better get your hotel ahead of time. You better know where you're going to park your car. You better know, how to get there and the routes and everything, because it's going to be like the World Cup is going on or something like that. The streets are filled.
Yeah, it's sold out. I think they have a Mothman pageant. There's like a Miss Mothman. It's like
it's growing and growing and growing to the point where, I remember what Comic-Con used to be decades ago. It was a bunch of, guys who would talk about Star Trek. Now you will see in the middle of New York City in the Jacob Javits Center, you will see, maybe 6 or 7 people thick of a line that goes 4, 5, 6, 7 city blocks around the corner just to get in. And they're all dressed up and they're all, I mean, it's a hot ticket. And that's what he turned Mothman Festival into. It's amazing.
Yeah, and it couldn't have been done by a better person. He's just a good guy.
Yeah, you want him to succeed.
Great hair.
Absolutely, and like has been able to keep the same hair. I'm jealous. The more I'm like, how are you still pulling this off?
Yeah,
you know.
And his daughter owns a shop down the street. I mean,
they do a fantastic job. And she's a great person. And she has helped us tremendously as well. And an incredibly talented artist herself, a talented photographer. They're just such a strong, good family. And it's just emblematic of what that town should be, right?
Yeah.
It's a small town built around family, and it's pretty much been saved by a family.
Yeah.
And I just respect them so much for what they've done. It's just it's such a good job, and they've never really sold out with like as its growth, you know, like it's still authentic. You still go out there, and it still just feels right. Like they've done such a good job, and you know, I know they've never been conceited or asked for credit or anything. It's like they've done all this stuff. I've watched them do it, and you know, just such a good guy, and it was such a good interview. If you remember, we interviewed him right outside that Mothman statue, and it's funny the perspective. You know, people sometimes have reached out and gone, "Hey, where's that little Mothman figure from the interview?" And I was like, "What are you talking about, Mothman figure?" And then I realized some people were misinterpreting the shot that we did with the perspective. It's like, you know, it's in the darkness, and Jeff is sitting in front of this 6-foot tall statue in the background.
Least 6.
But some people think
15 foot.
But some people think that it's like a miniature, and it's like it's funny. Yeah, it's funny how people absorb things sometimes in what they see. And the irony.
It's probably because they can't believe that there's a 15-foot stainless steel Mothman statue in the middle of the town.
It's true.
And the fact that we were able to light a nighttime scene in the middle of the town with no permits.
Yeah.
And running electrical lines across the street, and just nobody bothered us. Yeah,
I do remember that interview. Cops rolled by, and Jeff's like, "No, it's fine. They're going to just ask if you need help." And he was right. They did. They just wanted to know if we needed any help.
Yeah.
Well, what a great job the Wamsleys have done out there with all of this. And I think our film would not have been made without them. And I think we kind of gave back a little bit too by having our film represent their community accurately and well. And it's funny, you know, they still order DVDs from us. We still send them out there. So someone's still buying them. And it's good that they're having a still, you know, success out there. So chances are, if you've visited the Mothman Festival or had any interactions with the museum, you probably know Jeff, or the name has come up. And so now here is our revisitation of the original field interview tape with Jeff Wamsley of Point Pleasant, West Virginia, as I like to call him, the godfather of Mothman.
We're getting close up to everybody's eyes.
Oh, okay.
That's maybe something we're starting with. So I'll give you some info for the interview, which makes it always kind of like sound good, nice.
Okay.
So one is just talk to me as if the camera's not there. And just, it's really casual too. Like if you start an answer and you want to start over, you can just stop in the middle. You don't have to get it right the first time.
All right. I've been there, done that.
Times. Yeah. So if you want to, if you don't like your answer and you want to start, you know what I mean? If you lose your pace, whatever, just start over. It's no big deal.
Okay.
What else? If I ask you something that doesn't make sense, like if I have a fact wrong or something, just let me know. And fix it. There's no sense in like, you know, if you know I'm wrong or something, just fix it. Hey, look, it's the police.
They coming?
Yeah. You think they're going to be mad? I don't think.
Well, they know who you are.
Yeah. All right. This is in New York where everything gets shut down and all this work is for nothing.
They know who you are.
Yeah, I introduced myself to a bunch of them. I met them one day. They were really cool. The most important thing to remember is my question later on is not going to be there. So if you can like reiterate my question and your answer, that always sounds good. Like if I say, where are we today? And if you can say Point Pleasant, later on all I have is Point Pleasant. But if you say, we're in Point Pleasant today, it's a complete sentence.
All right. Yeah, once in a while I'll catch myself on that. But that's fine.
And this is not real, by the way. This is makeup from early, so I don't have any diseases.
Oh, okay. Okay.
And I have red on my eyes, too. We did we did this as after effects of a Mothman sighting. You know,
Oh, okay.
the red stuff. So we were filming that in the hotel before.
Okay.
All right. So before I ask you any questions, just so I have it correctly later on the tape, just say your name and spell it for me.
Okay. My name is Jeff Wamsley, JeffWamsley.
And for your title, do you want me to put author in the new book that you have out?
If you can. Yeah.
And just tell me what it is, just so I make sure it's right.
It's Mothman Behind the Red Eyes.
Cool. All right. So I'm going to break it down into kind of subjects. The first thing I'll talk to you about is the TNT.
Okay.
Are we good? All right. So the first question is, can you just tell me about the significance of the TNT plant prior to Mothman, and then its transformation over the years? Like, what did people go there for before Mothman was spotted there? And tell me about, you know, the TNT manufacturing plant, the igloos, the wildlife refuge, playing a role in the war. Kind of like, give me a timeline up to Mothman without going into it.
Okay. Well, the TNT area and the TNT plant, which is located about 6 miles north of Point Pleasant, was used a lot during the 40s during the World War II war effort, manufacturing things like dynamite, explosive materials, things like that. After World War II, the plant was basically abandoned. It became a haven for people to go cruising. There was a lot of drag racing going on up there in the TNT area. But mainly it was just for younger kids. It was a desolate area. There was plenty of places to party and park and drink and things like that. So it turned into a kind of a safe haven for a lot of kids to go, you know, have their fun and hang out with their friends and things like that. And basically even today it's a place where a lot of people go to hang out. But mainly during World War II, it was a busy place. It was a lot of buildings, a lot of activity going on and things like that. So, but after the World War II effort, most people used it as just a place for recreation. Now you can fish and you can hunt, things like that.
And then I'll ask you a few questions, just on some specific stuff too there.
Okay.
And also, I'm going to ask you the same question more than once. It just means
That's fine.
I'm going to try to get multiple answers so I can pick them later.
Okay.
The boom. Should we move the boom this way a bit? Like, are we we're not getting it.
Around all day, so that's why I was standing up.
Where are you teaching?
It was up to vocational school. Now over here, drafting class. They just basically sit around and do nothing.
Sounds like my kind of class. You good? All right. Sorry about that. So, can you just tell me about the TNT plant? Like, when the TNT plant was built, why was it built? You know, what was it used for? What was made there? What was it all about?
The TNT plant was constructed in the early 40s during World War II, and it was mainly a place where for manufacturing of TNT explosive materials for the war effort. In later years, after the war ended, the area became sort of abandoned, and it became a haven for a lot of. You know what?
Plus, we have this problem with the bricks.
Okay.
God, everything kept going on with the bricks. All right. So, just in like, did someone go squat? No?
Yeah, that light went out.
This will work.
Okay, we're rolling again.
Take a minute.
This is what, fourth one on the TNT area?
Can you just, I guess, briefly list for me, just give me like a timeline of the TNT area. Like, you know, the TNT area started out at, you know, I'm not sure which the correct order is, but, you know, it was TNT plant, manufacturing, buildings. It was a wildlife refuge. It was a hangout. It was...
What's a wildlife refuge now?
Right. So that's what I'm saying. Can you just give me a timeline?
Well, basically, the 40s was the plant.
Right.
The 50s and 60s and 70s was kind of the hangout.
Yeah.
In the 70s until now was a wildlife refuge.
Okay, that's perfect. So can you just
elaborate a little bit on each?
Touch on each. Yeah, just touch on that. Just give me kind of like a timeline of what the TNT plant area was, what it was known for, what did people go there for. You know, the transformation throughout the years.
Well, during the 1940s, during World War II, the TNT area and the plant facilities were a place for manufacturing explosive materials, dynamite, and different things for the war effort. And soon after the war ended, all the way from the 40s through the 50s, the plant still had some capacity. There were some people that were still employed there. But during the 60s and 70s, the plant closed, the buildings were no longer used, and the facilities weren't used. And then many people used the area as just a typical hangout, a place to go drag race, hang out with their friends, and things like that, all the way up until, just in the past decade or so, which now the TNT area is used as a wildlife refuge, a bird sanctuary. You can go there and fish, camp, hunt, and things like that.
Prior to the Mothman sightings, what did the TNT plant mean to like the locals? Like when someone said we're going to the TNT plant, what was that all about? You're talking about the drag racing and the hangout and things like that. Tell me, like prior to Mothman, what when you mentioned TNT plant around Point Pleasant, what did people acquaint?
Well, most people during the 60s and even the 50s would go to the TNT area. Now, the plant facilities and structures were on that property, but most people would go there because it was a desolate area. It was away from the city, about 6 miles north of the city. And, people could go up there and be themselves, hang out, and not have to worry about maybe the police or the locals, giving them a hard time. So it was a place of freedom. People could go there and drag race without the law enforcement agencies there and things. So it was just a hangout, and there was plenty of places to go, and it was a large area. So, you could go to TNT area and just have a good time, basically.
Can you tell me about the igloos that are near the TNT plants? What were they used for? First, I'll ask you, what were they used for when the plant was operational? What were the igloos?
Okay.
What was their purpose?
The igloos in the TNT area were strategically placed and used to store ammunition and weapons. Many of those igloos are still sealed today. They're rented out to private individual companies and things like that, but they were hidden from the air. You could not see the igloos from the air in case there was an invasion of some sort during the war. But they were mainly airtight storage facilities to keep weapons and ammunition, live ammunition, and other wartime supplies away from the public, secure and sealed.
No, I don't know if this is correct fact or not, but I heard that after the plant shut down, the igloos were rented out to like private companies and things like that.
Right.
And I had also read that some of the companies, like there were maybe some chemical companies or something that rented them out to store.
I'm not real sure who, but
yeah. Can you just tell me a little bit about after the war? After the TNT plants are used for being affiliated with the plant itself. Can you tell me about after that? About them being rented out to other companies, and I don't really need to know what companies, but what types of companies, like what types of things were stored there, if you know.
After the war effort, the TNT area, like I mentioned before, was still used, some of the facilities, and especially the igloos. And over the years, the igloos have been leased or rented out to private companies to store things like chemicals, supplies. Some people here locally don't even know what is being stored in the facilities or anything, but they have been leased to outside companies, not necessarily ammunition or like during World War II. But they are airtight, so there's a good possibility a lot of chemical companies and things like that would come in and lease those properties.
Can you tell me a little bit about the TNT area? How I guess it was in the 80s and maybe early 90s, the environmental investigations that were on there. Can you just tell me a little bit about when it was discovered that there was a problem there with some of the spillage and some of the contents that were at the plant and in those igloos? When was it first discovered that there was a spill? And then just tell me about what happened, basically. As if I don't know that story at all. Tell me kind of.
Okay. Well, naturally, after World War II, there was so much ground contamination because of the TNT and some of the other chemicals. Some of the ponds were contaminated. It was no secret that the EPA came in to to the area during the 80s and removed some of the topsoil because of the contamination from the weapon manufacturing and things like that. Many people locally would fish and hunt there, but a lot of people wouldn't feel safe eating the fish from the ponds, and you hear stories about some of the fish that were caught, they're mutated fish and things like that. So there was definitely an EPA cleanup effort. As far as the details go, that a lot of that was kept from the public and still is today.
But that it didn't. Weird things have gone on there.
Yeah.
And
I've talked to a few people that worked there.
Someone I've talked to, I don't know how true this is or not, but one person who they had mentioned that same people that supposedly built that facility were the ones that supposedly later on went on to build some of those other like top secret ones,
really?
like in Nevada and
Could be
other places. So
I wouldn't have any way of verifying that. But,
but just kind of side thing I kind of come across that was interesting. So can you just tell me what, if you can start with what year it was discovered that there was a spill? It doesn't have to be exact, but just like, it was in the 80s, was it 90s?
Yeah.
If you could start with
I think that they knew back even in the 40s how contaminated it was, you know.
Yeah, but they just didn't, something wasn't started.
Right, and then the 80s was mainly when the cleanup took place and stuff.
So I guess, can you just tell me about, what happened in the 80s then? There was a cleanup procedure up at the TNT. Can you just tell me what went on there?
During the 1980s, it was discovered through different tests and things that the topsoil in the TNT area was contaminated. So the EPA came in, removed the topsoil from the area, disposed of the topsoil, but many people locally still think that a lot of the TNT area is still contaminated.
Do you know what types of chemicals were found there during the investigations?
No, I'm not real familiar with that.
When it came out that there were some problems there in terms of like dangerous materials in the ponds and wildlife, were residents
they
not
weren't
happy
fazed
with
by
that?
No, I mean that I don't think they were really fazed by it a whole lot.
Really, they weren't mad at all.
None that I know of.
Right. Okay.
I don't really think that unless I just haven't talked to the right people.
No.
People still went up there.
People surprised that there was
I don't think
chemicals
they were.
in the ponds that they were fishing and things like that.
I don't think they were.
Okay.
I mean, I could mention something about that.
No, that's cool.
Okay.
I mean, a lot of these questions, like I said, are just
Mm-hmm.
if it is, then yes, no, whatever. We'll just skip it.
Okay.
The TNT plant areas today. Do you think that are they still creepy? Pretty much. I mean, it's been a lot of time since Mothman and stuff that's going on there. But can you just tell me about the TNT plants today? Is there still like a strange vibe there? Is it still kind of a little bit weird? Even
though the north and the south power plants are no longer standing, and that's where most of the Mothman sightings occurred, was near the north power plant. The TNT area is so desolate and barren and huge, and as far as acreage goes, it's just real easy to get lost in the TNT area. So many people describe a feeling of fear, to be in the TNT area at night, alone, or to be in the middle of the TNT area because it's just so vast of an area. And so people still talk about how creepy and eerie the TNT area is, even today, 40 years after the Mothman sightings.
There's two quick questions about Cornstalk. Can you just tell me a little bit about the legend of the curse of Cornstalk, as if I've never heard that story before? What's the story behind the curse of Cornstalk?
Chief Cornstalk was an Indian chief here during the 1700s in the Point Pleasant area, who was come to an agreement with the opposing forces, to call a truce. The truce didn't last, and he was betrayed and killed along with some of his other companions. And the legend goes that and during his last dying breath, that he put a curse on the town of Point Pleasant for 200 years. So everything from the Mothman sightings to the Silver Bridge collapse to the jail explosion in 1976, most people, most locals here feel that may have something to do with Chief Cornstalk's curse.
Thanks. And from your experience, just kind of talking with people in the community, do a lot of townspeople believe in the curse? It's kind of like a two-part question. Do a lot of people believe are they serious about the curse? Do a lot of people believe in it? And with that, what are some of the things that people blame on it? And when I ask about the blaming, without going into the specifics of like Mothman and stuff, things like general things like fires, floods, disasters, tragedies. What's always seems to be blamed on cornstalk. So, do people around the town, the community, do they believe in the cornstalk curse on the whole? Would you say? And if so, what are some of the like general things that are always blamed on?
I think that most people that live here in Point Pleasant today, and even 40 years ago, believe in the Mothman curse. I mean, obviously, there's going to be a few people that don't believe in it, but
cornstalk.
I'm sorry.
Mothman. Let's go.
All right,
let's catch it.
Try it again.
Yeah.
Okay.
It was good though.
Okay. Many people that live here in Point Pleasant today, and even 40 years ago during the Mothman sightings, still believe in the Chief Cornstalk's curse. There's going to be a few people that do not believe in it, but it's the major accidents or disasters that seem to bring up Cornstalk's curse. An automobile accident or a house fire, really doesn't go into that category. But you take a Silver Bridge collapse or a jail explosion, things like that. In the newspaper articles, Cornstalk's curse is always mentioned.
Right, so I'm going to ask you some Mothman stuff.
Okay.
Can you just tell me about the bandit and partridge incident? Can you just tell me that story again, like as if I've never heard it? Tell me that story of what happened and its significance.
The night before most of the Mothman sightings started here in Point Pleasant, the night before on November 14th, 1966, a farmer near Salem, West Virginia, which is about 2 hours north of Point Pleasant, began hearing strange noises outside of his house. It was about 11 p.m. Him and his family were watching TV, and he had a family pet. It was a large German Shepherd by the name of Bandit. And as the TV in his living room began making a loud noise and basically exploded in the floor, and as he opened the door to look outside to investigate, we can take it again.
We can start it from the middle of it.
Okay.
Just wait till your car goes. Yeah, tell me again.
She's going to make it worth our while there. She's just going to go around in circles.
All right, looks like she's inside her house. So, what were we talking about? Oh, the partridge incident. Just tell me, take it up from...
looking out back and seeing a...
Take it from man watching his TV.
Okay.
That part.
The farmer's name was Noel Partridge, and him and his family were watching TV. And as they heard this strange noise out back of their house, he opened the door, looked out, and saw what he claimed was red rotating lights, flashing lights that looked very strange. Before he could stop his dog, the dog began barking and ran out into the field. That was the last time he saw the dog. The dog disappeared. They searched for the dog for days. There was no sign of any, trauma or struggle with the dog. But then a couple days later, a large German Shepherd was found near the roadside here in Point Pleasant. That is how he was thrust into the Mothman story.
And can you just tell me, we'll touch on that a little bit more, why that is significant?
The reason that Noel Partridge's story is so significant is because the dog that he could not find that same evening, many people believe was the dog that the two couples in the car the first night here saw laying beside the road on Route 62. So there was a direct connection there. He even called the state police here in Point Pleasant because he heard about this dog being found in Point Pleasant over the wire. After that, he became Mothman history and became, thrust into the legend.
Can you just tell me, it doesn't have to be like a formal answer at all. Just tell me, like, if you can list for me the physical characteristics of the Mothman. We know from all the evidence and sightings and things like that, what do people always describe? Just list for me like the physical characteristics of Mothman.
Most every witness who claimed to have encountered the Mothman described a man-like creature with bird features, 6 to 7 feet tall, wingspan of 10 to 12 feet. But the most prominent feature was the glowing red eyes. And that's him right there in the truck, pulling into town.
Wait, this guy goes by.
Okay. You want me to start over?
Yeah, if you can.
Okay.
Tell me what the Mothman, the characteristics are from all these reports and sites.
Okay. Most everyone that encountered the Mothman creature or large bird or, whatever it was, described it as about 6 to 7 feet tall, grayish in color, a wingspan of 10 to 12 feet. But the most prominent feature would be the glowing red eyes, almost a hypnotic set of eyes that seemed to cause a trance or people to become almost hypnotized by looking at the eyes.
So can you tell me about the November 15th, 1966 sighting with the Scarberries and the Mallets? Again, as if kind of you're telling me it for the first time.
Do you want me to name
that's
name
fine.
them?
You can if you want. Yeah, either way.
Okay.
Just tell me, as much detail as you can.
Okay.
What that story is all about. Again,
Okay.
as if I've never heard of you kind of just telling me.
Okay. On November 15th, 1966, about 11 p.m., two couples, the Mallets and the Scarberries, were up in TNT area, just joyriding. They'd been up there to see some friends and things like that. We're driving by the North Power Plant, which was part of the TNT area facility. As they came across the curve in the road, Linda Scarberry described as what she saw. She thought was a man standing in the road, but as they got closer, it was a grayish in color, large wingspan with the glowing red eyes. She described it as almost an angel-like appearance. As they got closer, it startled the creature or, whatever it was, and it ran into the North Power Plant. At this time, the two couples really weren't sure what they were encountering and sat in the car for a few minutes and decided that they wanted to get out of the TNT area. Naturally, they were spooked, pretty good. So as they drove away, they were deciding whether they should go to the authorities, the police department. They went back out towards Route 62. As they turned left onto Route 62, they saw this creature again standing by a large billboard. They described the creature as flying straight up into the air, almost like a helicopter, and chasing the car on Route 62 into the Point Pleasant area. They hit speeds up to 80 to 90 miles an hour, and this bird-like creature flew over the car, wings flapping, but not making much effort, to get in front of the car. So many people thought that this creature was afraid of light. And as they got closer to the city limits and the lights of the city, the creature veered off into a field. That's when they went into town and contacted the police.
Can you tell me, after they report the story to the police, what happens next? There was a cop that escorted them back to the plant area, and from what I understand, they didn't see anything.
Right.
But they heard some things over the radio, I guess. Is that right?
Yeah. Immediately, the two couples went to the police department, sat down with the sheriff's deputies and the sheriff, described what they had encountered in the TNT area. And they were met with some, not a great welcome over the news of a 6-7 foot creature with red eyes. The sheriff decided to send one of the deputies back up to the TNT area with the two couples. They decided to go back up. They actually didn't go all the way up to TNT area. They stopped near the outskirts of Point Pleasant and seen the creature again as it flew over top of the car and ran into a field. In the next couple days, the police and the sheriff's department did go up and claim to have found some footprints and tracks. There were some reports of some garbled communication on the radio, almost like a mouse-like shrieking sound on the radios. But the sheriff's department was then involved, in the investigation along with the state police.
And so, what was it you say that made the police take it seriously? Was it the fact that they believed the story? Was it the fact that what tell me, what was it? What made the police get involved in a serious manner? What was the convincing factor for them?
Immediately upon arriving to the police department, the 4 witnesses were put in separate rooms to write individual police reports. Each one of these witnesses described the same thing, and I think that's what made the police realize that they weren't dealing with just a hoax or just something that was contrived or made up. So that's when the police began their investigation and sent some of the deputies to the TNT area.
So so far we talked about the Partridge sighting and then also Scarberry's sighting. And then even before that, there was kind of a sighting in Clendenin where there was the men digging the grave, see a man. That's even before both of those.
Yeah.
Can you just tell me, when you look at all of those together, even those 3 incidents alone, it seems that there's connecting factors. The men see the man flying in the trees in Clendenin, then several days later it's Partridge's dog. And then several days later, it's the Scarberries, and then the dog is seen there. Can you just talk to me a little bit about, the multitude of sightings that were occurring, but then also the fact that there were these like connecting facts of the story. Like it seems as if these are all kind of pieces of the same puzzle. Can you just tell me about that a little bit?
Right. Many of the sightings early on, such as the men digging the grave in Clendenin, Noel Partridge's experience with the dog bandit, and the 2 couples in the car all had a common bond. Number one, they were close in vicinity and area-wise, in the West Virginia, 2 hours north to Salem, West Virginia, and Clendenin's probably an hour the other direction. So, and these sightings all happened within just literally, days or weeks of each other. So there was an immediate connection made there as far as, the proximity of the sightings and the frequency of the sightings.
This podcast is a companion piece to the original feature-length documentary film from 2011 of the same title. If you're enjoying this podcast, we encourage you to see the film that started it all by visiting www.eyesofthemothman.com.
So can you just tell me again about after the 4 kids are attacked November 15th, police officer escorts them back to the scene, or near the area of the scene. Can you just tell me about that part of the story again? Pick it up from after the kids come into the police station. What happens?
Okay, I'll wait till the car gets by there. Just let me know when.
You can go ahead with it.
Okay. Immediately after the 2 couples came to the sheriff's department here in Point Pleasant, some of the deputies were dispatched with the 2 couples to go back to the TNT area and investigate. They stopped on the outskirts of town near where the dead dog had been seen. They wanted to check. The dog was actually gone whenever they went back that same evening. They did see the creature again near where the dead dog had been seen. It flew into a field, and it scared the 2 couples again. They decided to go back up to the TNT area near the North Power Plant. One of the deputies claimed to have found a few footprints, nothing real concrete. There were some reports of garbled messages on the 2-way radios at that time. But even after that, the sightings began to get more numerous. So after that, I think the police decided that there were too many people seeing this thing to really shrug it off and think it was just a few kids up there, trying to pull a hoax or whatever.
One thing, I don't know if it's true or not, but one thing that seems to be interesting about the Scarberry and Mallet case is that when it first happened, one thing you mentioned was that the police reports all separately, which kind of helped their story, but also the fact that not a lot of people. I mean, I'm sure there were doubts, but not a lot of people just outright doubted them 100%. Mm-hmm. And a lot of things that I've read also, it says that just they were believed because
they were so scared.
Yeah, they were legitimately scared. So can you tell me that? You can also talk more about. You can also add in about the police report, but if you could just tie in too about the fact that they weren't really doubted because there was some legitimate fear there that was picked up on.
there are several factors in the townspeople believing the four witnesses, the Mallets and the Scarberries, that first night. Number one, and before they actually came to the police department, they stopped at Tiny's Drive-In, which was right close to where the dog had been seen, the dead dog, and reported what they had encountered to the owner. He then called the police department and sat down with them. He knew these people, knew them, they frequented his restaurant. So he could tell that they were really scared and spooked. So when they came to the police department also, I think the police, seen how these people had been affected and were upset. It's just like they weren't showing up and saying they saw a red-eyed monster. They were genuinely upset and, fearful of going back up to the TNT area.
Can you tell me about, on the whole, a lot of people that came into contact with Mothman had unusual experiences afterward, physically, and tell me some of the after effects, both physical and like mental. Some people,
I know more of the mental stuff,
Okay, but I mean, just basic stuff. I mean, they had red marks in red eye. Kind of
Linda told me about that. That's really the only person I know of that.
Okay, but I mean, on the whole, I mean, and I guess were there other incidents where people had reported later that there were like
I'm
skin
not sure.
irritations or stuff?
I know she mentioned it.
Okay.
She was.
Well, then just tell me a little bit about that. Tell me about the physical and then the mental kind of after effects of seeing the Mothman.
After the Mothman experience or the large bird sighting, in the TNT area, many of the witnesses were distraught. They were very stressed out. They suffered a lot of mental anguish. Always looking over their shoulder. They felt that whatever this thing that they had encountered was going to come back. They felt that it had a constant presence, and they nervous breakdowns, divorce, things like that. A few of the witnesses described, irritated skin, the red eyes, irritated eyes, and things like that. But I think it was more of a mental stress situation that most of these people experienced, whether it be the fear of being humiliated and laughed at by people in the town, or the simple fact that they were literally scared out of their wits.
Okay. Can you tell me, how did the incident of November 15th, 1966 change Point Pleasant forever?
The November 15th, 1966 Mothman encounter brought the Mothman legend to a worldwide attention. The press, the newspapers, the news reporters, it began to spread like wildfire. It opened the door for all of the sightings to follow within the next 3-month period. You had about 100 people reporting the same thing that the two couples encountered that first night on November 15th. And it did wake a lot of people up as to what may be living in the North Power Plant or stalking the grounds of TNT area.
A lot of people talk about the eyes. The Mothman, can you tell me about the eyes?
The most prominent feature that most of the eyewitnesses described was the glowing red eyes. Although some people have mentioned not seeing the eyes, most others said that the eyes were almost a hypnotic, trance-like vision. And we'll stop there, I guess, It's funny how nobody ever goes down these roads until you're doing something, Nobody ever drives down these roads.
Yeah, I know.
Okay.
So tell me a little bit about the eyes and the Mothman.
Most of the eyewitnesses that encountered the Mothman described the eyes as a glowing, red-like eyes that were almost hypnotic, a trance-like, and they were drawn in to the eyes. Many people couldn't describe the facial features because they were drawn so close to seeing the eyes. So that was the common denominator that seemed to gather everybody's attention was the red eyes that stood out.
Can you tell me after? the eyes seem to affect a lot of people. It was
Mhm.
kind of like the thing they always remember, or it was kind of, there was like the vulnerability feeling when people saw the eyes, or there was kind of like a
Right.
frozen feeling. Can you tell me about some of the effects of the eyes? When people came into contact,
Mhm.
eye-to-eye contact with the Mothman, what were some of the things that came with that?
Well, most of the eyewitnesses that saw the Mothman, that were drawn into the eyes, felt that they were almost in a hypnotic state, that they were almost helpless. Many of them described as the feeling as not really being scared of being harmed physically, but just where they couldn't move or they couldn't run away, that they had to keep looking towards these red fiery eyes. It almost hypnotized a lot of these people. Although some people didn't claim to see the eyes, but some of the key witnesses described that as what stood out the most.
Justin, can you go give me the fuzzy? Yeah. Can you go give me the fuzzy? Yes.
Do we need to wait on it?
No.
Can you tell me, after the Mothman spotted, what's it like at the TNT plant now? When I'm talking about now, right after Mothman spotted, and it's known that the Mothman kind of hangs out here. How is the atmosphere different there? Can you tell me, the people steered away from there because they were afraid, and then people went there hunting for the thing. Tell me a little bit about that.
As soon as all the Mothman sightings began to occur, the hunt for Frankenstein was on, and literally you had miles and miles of cars flowing into the TNT area. Some people were armed with weapons, and it became a town ritual, just almost like going to the movies or going out for a dinner. A lot of people, along with their families, mine included, even though I was 5 years old, would flow into the TNT area to get a glimpse, to see if somebody could either get a glimpse or take a shot at this creature that people were seeing. It got to the point where the authorities had to stop all of the traffic as they were fearing that somebody would end up getting shot or hurt during the hunt for Mothman.
Do you remember growing up there, even though you were really little? No,
not at all. No, but my mom said, Dad took us up there, but I was 5. I do remember when the bridge fell, but I don't remember the other.
When the Mothman spotted, did people start talking again about the cornstalk curse? Was he again blamed for Mothman? How soon after Mothman sightings did that start to float around again?
I think naturally, after the Mothman sightings began, some people felt that the cornstalk curse was at work again, even though there really wasn't a disaster, with the Mothman sightings. Definitely when the Silver Bridge collapsed, that Chief Cornstalk curse came to the surface again. But, just the Mothman sightings being a weird, abnormal thing going on, many locals felt that Cornstalk was rolling in his grave.
Can you just tell me a little bit about the media attention that happened when Mothman started to get big out in the TNT plant area? It started to get global. Tell us about that.
One day after the initial Mothman sightings on November 15th, the Sheriff's Department decided to call a press conference with members of the local and regional media. From there, it took off like wildfire. You had reporters from all over the world descending on Point Pleasant to see what all the fuss was about. So it definitely put Point Pleasant on the map, which some people here didn't appreciate. But the media did definitely take over the town and remained here, for months afterwards.
After the Mothman spotted more frequently, there were some professors at universities who tried to say the thing was just a sandhill crane or like a rare species of bird. For the people that witnessed Mothman firsthand, were they insulted by that?
Yeah.
Because there are people that grew up in West Virginia, and people from West Virginia, they know a lot about their environment.
Right.
They're hunters and they're
Right.
fishermen and things like that. Can you tell me a little bit about that theory that came out from universities and how people that experienced Mothman firsthand reacted to it.
One of the professors from West Virginia University was brought into Point Pleasant to kind of calm the locals down, and his theory was that what these people were seeing in the TNT area and around Point Pleasant was nothing more than a large sandhill crane. It was on a migrating path to the south. All of the witnesses that I've spoken to were insulted by that theory. They stuck to their stories, and even to this day, felt that that was just a way for, some of the powers that be to bring someone in to kind of, calm the townsfolk, down. But, most of the people who encountered this thing did not feel that what they were seeing was a sandhill crane.
Can you tell me a little bit about what life is like after someone sees the Mothman? Some say that the after effects are actually worse than the actual sighting itself. Can you tell me about what some of these people are talking about? Many
of the people who encountered the Mothman or the large bird for years, even today, 40 years later, feel paranoid. They feel like something's always watching. Many of them have trouble sleeping. Their mental stress is still probably as strong, if not stronger, than it was back then, because maybe there wasn't enough closure. Nothing was ever actually caught or captured or explained. So that kind of leaves the book open.
Can you tell me about the Marcella Bennett incident, as if I never heard the story you told me for the first time? What happened?
That was the 16th?
It doesn't.
I think it was.
It was November 16th, 66. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. On November 16th, 1966, just one day after the two couples spotted the Mothman near the North Power Plant, Marcella Bennett, her sister-in-law, and her husband went to the TNT area to visit some relatives. And they had read this story about the Mothman in the paper, and like a lot of other locals, thought it was just a little bit of hype and maybe just a hoax. So they thought it would be fun to drive up there and check it out for themselves. But after their visit, they began to go towards the car. Her husband spotted a strange light in the sky. She was not interested. She was carrying her 2-year-old baby to the car. But as she arrived to the door of the car, she was standing right beside a large bird-like creature. She at first thought it was a man dressed in khaki clothes, but then she noticed the feet and the feathers, kind of a rough, grayish, feathery look. The thing stood right beside of her, stared her right in the face, and she turned and ran towards the house. As she ran, she tripped and fell, landed on top of the child, and after she picked the child up, went into the house. They immediately called the sheriff's department. By the time the sheriff's deputies arrived, there was no sign of the creature. She claimed that it did walk onto the porch and stare into the windows. So she definitely probably had the closest look at this thing that most other witnesses were in a car or from a distance. She stared this thing right at in the eyes.
I think one thing that's important about the Marcella Bennett case is what you just touched on, that the sighting, there are a few things. The sighting is really close, and there's multiple people there to back up what happened.
Right.
And then also it lasts it's not like someone sees it for a half a second, runs in the woods. It lasts several minutes long.
Right.
Can you tell me about, why Marcella, why the, you want to put on more? I'm just going to throw this microphone cover on.
Okay.
Okay.
Marcella Bennett.
I was asking about Marcella Bennett.
Okay.
The important things of her case is that, it happens so close and it happens for quite a period of time, and there are people to back her up. Can you tell me about the most significant aspects of her story?
A few of the things that give a lot of validity to the Marcella Bennett encounter was number one was there were more than several people in the house at the time that saw this thing. Let me try it again. Yeah, sure. I don't know if you're picking that noise up or not.
Sometimes it's
okay.
I'll
okay.
tell you when I have problems.
Okay. All right. a few of the things that give the Marcella Bennett story a lot of validity is the fact that there were numerous people in the house at the time the encounter took place, and the encounter lasted for probably up to 15, 20 minutes. Although by the time the police arrived, this thing was not in sight. So everyone in the house did get a decent look at what this thing was. So it's not like it was just one person. They all filled out police reports and told the police what they had saw.
I'm going to ask the same question again, just to get just another option. Can you just list for me like the 3 defining characteristics that make Marcella Bennett's case important? Just give me like it could literally be that the 3 things that make this case significant or stand out from the others.
Right.
And just give me those 3.
Right. 3 of the big reasons that the Marcella Bennett encounter is viable is the fact that it was in close proximity to the North Power Plant in the TNT area. Number 2, she stood right beside of this thing and stared, directly into its face. And number 3, that there were numerous witnesses in the house and around the house at the time the encounter took place.
Can you tell me about the Mothman sightings? Another thing that's important to the story is it wasn't a few people, that see something and that's it. Like this, can you just tell me a little bit about the sightings starting to grow, get larger, and then how many, the numbers, how many people see this thing? And it really builds and builds, kind of. I think. Can you tell me about that?
After the first Mothman encounters on November 15th, within about a 3-month period, you had over 100 people going to the police or phoning in reports or reporting a large bird-like man with the same characteristics that the first witnesses claimed to have encountered. So at that point, I think it caught the attention of the authorities, and they knew that they were definitely onto something, and there was something abnormal going on in and around Point Pleasant. So 1 or 2 people, it could be doubted, but when you have over 100 people that were only reported sightings, when, in my opinion, there were a lot more that did not report what they saw.
So when all was said and done, approximately how many sightings took place over how long a period?
Let me start again. After the November 15th, 1966 Mothman encounters, you had well over 100 people who reported sightings just within a 3-month period. Most of the sightings, went on all the way into 67, kind of slacked off a little bit after the Silver Bridge collapse.
Do you think that if the incidents here were just Mothman, no UFOs, no bridge collapse, no curse, would people be a little more accepting to the idea that maybe Mothman is something kind of grounded, like, more of the bird theory? Do you think like the UFOs and all the other weird stuff kind of made it a little more unacceptable that it could have been something earthbound? I'll talk a little bit about that.
Okay.
The fact that they get acquainted with one another.
You had several large components of the Mothman story. Number 1 was the Mothman sightings. Number 2 was all the UFO activity. Number 3, you had the Silver Bridge collapse. And number 4, you had a lot of the Men in Black reports. So with all of that into one ball of wax, the Mothman story is more interesting and it was more believable. If you would have had 2 or 3 people just calling the sheriff's department saying, "Hey, I saw a man with red eyes and wings," the story probably never would have got off the ground. But it was the fact that all of these played an integral part in the whole complex situation.
I think one thing that's interesting is I think people more so believe that Mothman was connected to something supernatural or something extraterrestrial. I think more so they believe it has something to do with that. But I think one thing that's interesting about that is when you kind of look at the evidence of what happened, that almost seems to be more plausible than, say, like some of the other explanations. It just seems to that just seems to be, almost more like credible to a degree. you just talk about the fact that more, that it seems to be the majority, that most people think it has something to do with a supernatural side or an extraterrestrial side, but actually, when you kind of look at the evidence, it almost appears, you understand, maybe it's understandable where they come up with that theory.
Yeah. A lot of the Mothman witnesses felt that what they were encountering was almost a spiritual and not really a material image that they were encountering. So with the mental situation of a lot of these people afterwards, they felt that this thing could be in multiple places at one time. It wasn't just like an animal or a deer or a bear that they were seeing. It was something from another realm, maybe extraterrestrial type thing. But the fact that it could fly and had the red eyes and the abnormal features and things kind of squelched that bird theory for a lot of these people. On the other hand, some people went right with the bird theory. As a matter of fact, most people here in Point Pleasant referred to it as the big bird.
I think today, unlike a lot of other paranormal incidents, other stories and things around the world of similar type stuff, I think unlike other scenarios like that, it's clear that something happened here. Something had to have gone on.
Mm-hmm.
Do you think now, like in 2006, is it time to kind of move on and ask what happened, as opposed to, well, did it happen? Like, it's kind of, that question's kind of over and done with now. It's something definitely happened. And do you think that, too many people today are still kind of asking the wrong question of, well, did it happen? And it's time to kind of say, well, what happened? Because it's already been established out there.
Right. My personal opinion on whether or not, the Mothman sightings will ever be solved is probably not. I think it's an open book. Most people know that the events are all documented, that they did happen. Many of the witnesses have passed on, but many are still living, but some refuse to even talk about it to this day. So it's a big part of Point Pleasant's history. But honestly, I don't think that there'll ever be a rational explanation to what happened, which makes it all the better for people that are still curious and want to look into their own angles or their own investigative intuition or whatever you want to call it,
But do you think that still happens today, though, where skeptics are still kind of, it's like, not, for people that are skeptical, it's still kind of asking whether or not something happened here. It doesn't progress anything. Whereas if there's going to ever be closure, even though it might not be, it's kind of, now enough time has gone by where it's evident that something did occur here, that it just, it needs to be a question of what occurred here, but not did it. Is that accurate?
Yeah. There's many people today, even 40 years later, who are interested in solving the Mothman mystery. And probably because for 40 years people have asked, what it was, why did people see it, why did it happen here in Point Pleasant? So, it's something that people want to try to solve, and whether or not they'll ever be able to do it remains to be seen. The original witnesses won't be around forever, so it's up to the investigative minds to piece apart. But it's an interest that a lot of these people have. They want to try to close the book once and for all and solve the mystery.
I'm going to ask you some UFO. Wait, am I asking you UFO? No. Yeah. Just a couple quick general questions about West Virginia. Can you just tell me about the terrain of West Virginia for people that have never been here, that don't know what it is? It's fairly big and it's vast and it's filled with a lot of places to hide. A lot of people say, like, well, how could the Mothman just come and go? Well, even if it's not something of, extraterrestrial origin,
right?
There's plenty of places out here to hide in terms of the terrain. Can you talk a little bit about that, the terrain of West Virginia, and how it's kind of easy to understand. It's easy for something to be elusive,
right?
Be in the woods, be in the dark.
West Virginia is nicknamed the Mountain State, and even here in Point Pleasant, you have a lot of hills, a lot of rolling hills, a lot of pasture land. The TNT area itself is miles and miles and miles, of area. You have the river area, the Ohio River and Canal River, but The terrain of West Virginia and here in Mason County, Point Pleasant, is vast. There's not a lot of rural building, so to speak, but there's plenty of places for wildlife, birds, animals, and things like that. So it's a large area that's spread out with a lot of rolling hills. Not so much mountains here, but more hills and areas like that.
And Point Pleasant's not the only place that something like this has happened. Similar things have been in Texas. There's been giant birds spotted in Texas and other continents, other countries. New Jersey has the Jersey Devil legend, which it actually has a lot of similar attributes and characteristics to this. Can you just tell me a little bit about some of these other global things that are similar, but also with that, if there are these similar things going on elsewhere, I mean, does that kind of point to the fact that there has to be something to this? That there are people in Asia who see the same thing that have never heard of the Mothman of Point Pleasant, but it's all the same characteristics.
Some people here in Point Pleasant have always felt that the Mothman sightings were connected somehow to some of the large bird sightings, the Thunderbird sightings, like in Texas, overseas, and places like Russia and some of the other countries. People will claim to have seen a flying man with a large wingspan. So a lot of people don't feel that the Mothman was contained just to this area. These things have been reported for literally hundreds and hundreds of years. The documentation may not have been what they are today or even 40 years ago, but some people felt that there was some sort of a connection with a large flying humanoid, and then somebody in Texas reporting basically the same thing as a Thunderbird or a flying man.
And can you talk about if there are such broad reports of it globally, does that kind of does that indicate a little bit, or is that kind of revealing a bit to the fact that there is something behind all of these stories?
Yeah,
that there if it's happening kind of globally, there has to be some truth to it. I mean, 10 different countries aren't going to fabricate the same story based on coincidence.
Right.
Can you talk about that?
Yeah. I think the fact that there have been other sightings similar to the Mothman sightings here in Point Pleasant have made people here locally realize that, Point Pleasant is not the only town or small area that's experienced this. So worldwide sightings and reports add validity. Many of these sightings have numerous witnesses, close encounters and things like that. So, it does make the scope a little larger as far as, the validity of the sightings.
And can you tell me about, specifically here in Point Pleasant, the people reporting the bizarre events that were going on here? They were all walks of life. They were policemen, public officials, church-going people that were respected in the community. Can you tell me about some of the people reporting the oddities that were going on here? How...
Right. One of the major elements of the Mothman sightings here was the fact that most of the witnesses were locals. They were respectable townspeople, decent reputations. It wasn't just a town drunk that was claiming to see this creature. People from all walks of life, but credible people and down to earth people that really wouldn't have any reason to make a lot of this stuff up. Most of those people knew that they would be humiliated and made fun of, but I think that adds a grassroots approach to what happened. The fact that it could have been your neighbor that saw it.
I'm going to ask a couple of UFO questions. Many of the UFO cases and sightings that occurred here kind of broke the mold of typical UFO sightings. People weren't just seeing lights in the sky, but actually seeing craft and working machinery, things like that. And there were even some things that happened broad daylight. People walking right up to some of these things. Can you tell me about some of these incidents that kind of break the mold of the standard kind of universal UFO sighting?
During the Mothman sightings here in 66, 67, you had a rash of UFO activity. People reporting things, like daytime sightings, numerous lights in the sky, actual communication back and forth with some of these spacecraft or whatever they were. People never, understood what they were really seeing, but it was basically in the tri-state area. It wasn't just in Point Pleasant, but there's all kinds of documentation, for Kentucky, Ohio, West Virginia area with just numerous UFO activity, and some felt that was a direct connection to the Mothman sightings.
Can you tell me about the nightly UFO sightings that started to emerge here in town? They were just like the Mothman. They were almost always over the Ohio River and over the TNT plants, and it was again kind of like it almost became regular. People were seeing these things nightly. Right. It became like a part of every day living here. I guess why. Tell me about that.
Okay. Just like the Mothman sightings, the UFO sightings were almost commonplace. People would every night go out, looking for UFOs, either the Mothman or the UFOs, looking for the strange colored lights in the sky, pack the family up in the car and go look for the UFOs. So it became, almost, a common thing to do every evening.
And can you just briefly tell me about some of the things people are seeing, lights, crafts, things like that? UFO related? What were they seeing, reporting?
Many people here in Point Pleasant were seeing a lot of multicolored lights in the sky, rotating lights in the sky, some metallic looking spacecrafts during the daytime flying over top of the houses, low altitudes, and almost so close to where you can almost make out what color lights were on them.
For more information about our program, or to find out where you can watch the original documentary film or purchase a limited edition signed DVD copy, please visit www.eyesofthemothman.com.
Did when the UFOs started to pop up, did people start to forget about the Mothman? Was it kind of like Mothman's out now and the UFOs are in? Like, was it did the UFOs start before the Mothman? What was that?
When the Mothman sightings began, the UFO sightings were also at a pretty heavy rate. So a lot of connection was made between the two. Most people thought that the Mothman sightings were directly related to the strange lights in the sky, the UFO sightings. So there was a connection between the two.
I'm going to ask you some questions about Mary Hyre.
Okay.
It's more so just to kind of, even though I know you didn't, know
right,
her or whatever.
Okay.
It's just more to establish her story.
Okay.
She had become, Mary Hyre had become kind of a shoulder to lean on for people that were experiencing these odd events. Can you talk about her work and about how she plays a key role in this story?
Mary Hyre was a local news reporter for the Athens, Ohio Messenger newspaper, which had an office here in downtown Point Pleasant. And she was credited as the person who actually broke the Mothman story and the UFO stories to the press. She was a very highly respected lady, very civic-minded, involved in a lot of the town's activities. So she had a lot of respect from the people, and I think that's why a lot of people thought that this stuff wasn't all made up. She did become friends with John Keel, some of the Mothman witnesses. Just move on. Jeez.
They did. It was 60.
There's no traffic coming down through there hardly, and they just sit there.
I know. It's weird. Well, I'm like just being here for the last 2 weeks.
Yeah.
No one uses this little section.
Yeah.
But, oh well, they heard you were here, so I want to come by and sneak a photograph.
Yeah, right. Throw a tomato at me or something.
Can you tell me what types of things would people call Mary Hyre for? What were some of the things people were reporting regular to her? What type of happenings and occurrences was called?
Well, Mary Hyre became friends with some of the witnesses. People would report directly to her, what they were seeing, whether it be Mothman-related encounters or UFOs. She had a direct line to the media. I mean, she could, she had a weekly column that she would write for the local newspapers, and And many of those columns included some of these descriptions and encounters.
And she had become kind of like a shoulder to lean on, I guess, because a lot of people, I guess.
They can confide in her.
Tell me about that.
Okay. Many of the witnesses could confide in Mary Hyre because she was trusting and she didn't think that all these people were kooks and making this stuff up. So there was a bond instantly between Mary Hyre and the witnesses, and some of the people here that were taking this thing a little more serious rather than thinking that it was a hoax. So she was kind of like, somebody that they could trust and go talk to and not have to worry about being laughed at.
Aside from the UFO sightings and Mothman, people also reported a great deal of like other strange things, like odd noises, beeps, problems with their electronics, strange activity like that. Aside from Mothman and UFO stuff, can you tell me about some of the other kind of oddities and strange experiences people were reporting to Mary Hyre?
Many people would report to Mary Hyre things like, picking up a telephone and hearing somebody else on the other line, dead phone lines, beeping noises and strange noises in the phone lines and things like that, which they thought maybe were connected to the fact that they were talking to her directly, and maybe somebody was listening in. They wanted to get in the way and stop all the nonsense or whatever. So, there was a little bit of paranoia going on between communication lines and things like that.
Talk a little more about some of the electrical disturbances around town. I mean, Partridge. Well, even though Partridge wasn't in Point Pleasant, his TV exploded, and it seemed like with a lot of UFO sightings and stuff, there seemed to be these phone disturbances, beeping noises. Can you just talk a little bit about on the whole here in town? There was a lot of kind of like electrical disturbances.
I'm not real familiar with a lot of that.
Okay.
I never really talked to anybody that.
Right.
Okay. Rather than me make something up, I've never really talked to anybody about it. Now, other than Noel Partridge, right. He talked about that, but Linda or nobody ever had mentioned that to me.
Can you tell me? Do you remember? There's the story. I think it's in Keel's book. It's the incident with Mary Hyre where the little dude kind of comes in her office and takes the pen from her, type of thing. Remember that story?
It was a Men in Black type guy.
Right.
Yeah.
It's like this little creepy kind of guy. Mm-hmm. Can you just tell me that story again? It's to kind of progress the story when I do tell it, but tell it to me as if I've never heard it before. What happened there? Tell me about that strange thing with Mary Hyre.
Mary Hyre, while in her office, working one day, described a short Oriental man coming into her office, asking a lot of questions. Wanting to know what right she had to be printing some of these sightings in the paper. Very strange, abnormally behavior. She was kind of concerned about, who this guy was. She didn't know who he was or anything, but this became a common thing. She would be contacted by strangers, out-of-town people. She didn't know who they were, but they were definitely interested in what she was reporting to the public.
I'm going to talk a little bit more about the Men in Black there. You just started to go into it. People in Point Pleasant were not only witnessing the strange things in the sky, but also kind of like right on the ground, right in front of their faces. A lot of witnesses claim to have had face-to-face intrusions with what people call the Men in Black. Can you tell me about some of these incidents, some of the, some of these things that were going on?
Okay. During the Mothman and the UFO activity here in Point Pleasant, some of the local townspeople reported seeing strange men walking around dressed in black hats, sunglasses. They didn't know if they were government agents here to investigate or if they were CIA, FBI, or maybe what some people thought may have been people from another realm. These people would stop, ask questions, wanted to know what was going on with the Mothman and the UFO activity. So it made a lot of people, put a lot of people on edge here in Point Pleasant. They didn't know who they were, and they had no explanation of, why they were here.
Can you tell me about some of the people that were being confronted by them? Was it Mothman witnesses and UFO witnesses?
A lot of the Mothman witnesses here had direct contact or run-ins with some of these Men in Black. Many of them tried to avoid these guys. They didn't want to talk about what they had encountered, and but some of them were frightened, especially Mary Hire. You know, she was basically harassed on a regular basis by some of these people. They were not happy with what she was reporting to the public.
Someone singing or something.
I don't know where it's coming from.
Can you just talk a little bit about, the outsiders that were witnessed? Point Pleasant's a pretty small place, and it's kind of like everyone knows everyone, so an outsider kind of stands out, today and even then. Can you tell me a little bit about that, playing a role in that? Because a lot of people, I think, might go like, well, how do they know that they didn't belong?
Yeah.
I mean, I think that plays a key role.
Yeah. The fact that these so-called men in black were dressed the way they were made them stand out to some of the locals. These guys were, like I said, dressed in black trousers, black jackets, black hats. So they didn't look like the typical farm worker or local factory worker that made their home here in Point Pleasant.
I'm going to ask you some injured cold stuff.
I'm not real familiar with that stuff, but you can ask and I'll tell you if I never really got too much into that end of it.
Can you just tell me in generally what the overall story is there of what you know about it?
Woodrow Derenberger?
What's his experience? What happened there?
Woodrow Derenberger was a man that lived around the Parkersburg area, and during the time of the Mothman sightings, claimed to have had an encounter on Route 77 on a freeway with a UFO and a being that came out of the UFO. He claimed that this entity went by the name of Indrid Cold. It was all documented, just like the Mothman story in some of the local papers in the Parkersburg area. But, that somehow crept into the Mothman story. Some people felt that was also another chapter in the Mothman story. But I'm not real familiar with all that.
Okay, that's cool.
I know John Keel never. Well, it's not that he doesn't like him. He just never gave it much
credibility.
When I've asked him about it, he's just like, nah. So, but who's to say, that's just his opinion.
Right. So should I even go into that with you or no?
Probably not, because I'll just be mumbling and,
okay.
I'm not real well versed on that.
All right. Let me just ask you like one or two more questions, just to make sure I have someone else talking a little bit about it. And if it's a question that you don't know, then let me know.
All right.
But I'll try to at least get maybe like two more from you. Do you remember what Derenberger described as the one thing I'm talking about is that Derenberger described the person that he supposedly met injured cold. He didn't describe him as like an alien with tentacles and stuff like that. It was like an everyday kind of average man type of thing. Do you remember that part at all?
No, I don't. All I know is pretty much what's been reported.
Right. Case, and then why people affiliated with Mothman.
The Indrid Cold story, is it cold or coal?
Cold.
Okay. The Indrid Cold story that occurred in Parkersburg, which is only an hour away from Point Pleasant, some people felt that that was also another chapter in the Mothman UFO activity going on here. A direct encounter on Route 77, with this strange being dressed just normally, as a normal person. So that was kind of tied into the whole Mothman story.
All right, I'm going to ask you Silver Bridge stuff, okay?
Okay.
So December 15th of 67, it's what is it, not a year to the day of the first Mothman sighting, but about 13 months from the first big Mothman sighting.
Right.
It's the bridge's 39th year in existence. Before going into the collapse, can you just tell me, lead me up to it from that night on? Like, what type of night was it? Was it cold? What month are we in? Just tell me a little bit about it. Build me up before going into the fall of it. What type of night it was like here in Pleasant.
December 15th, 1967 was a very cold, chilly, damp evening. You had the Christmas rush hour going on. Downtown was bustling with holiday shoppers, and the main artery from Point Pleasant to the Gallipolis, Ohio area was the Silver Bridge. It was jam-packed with cars. You had a traffic light on the Point Pleasant side, and you also had a traffic light on the other side, on the Ohio side. So it was right at the height of rush hour, just a lot of traffic, a lot of gridlock, and that was a day that changed Point Pleasant forever.
The Silver Bridge, the collapse, it was a major disaster, and even magnified more so because of the small community of Point Pleasant. Can you just talk a little bit about that? That, a lot of people, it's stupid, but a lot of people, when it comes to a tragedy, they always measure it by numbers. And
right,
it's 46 is a lot of people, but it doesn't even really put it into perspective until you understand how Point Pleasant is. Can you just talk about that, the community being fairly small, and then it touched everyone because someone knew someone or was a relative?
46 people died when the Silver Bridge collapsed on December 15th, 1967. And even to this day, the wounds are still fresh because, the 46 people that lost their lives, just about everybody in town knew somebody that was on the bridge or had a relative that was on the bridge or may have came close to being on the bridge themselves. So it was a direct impact that affected Point Pleasant and the neighboring small towns like Gallipolis, Ohio, and some of the other towns surrounding Point Pleasant. But it was a major catastrophe, the worst bridge disaster in U.S. history, and 40 years later, it's still very fresh in the minds of people that live here.
When the bridge fell, can you just tell me what happened in terms of, if someone was there, kind of what they would have saw, just in terms of, to put in perspective, how the bridge fell. Was it quick? Was it long? Did it fall in pieces? Things like that. Can you tell me about the actual collapse of the bridge?
The collapse of the Silver Bridge started near the Ohio side when an eye bolt in the tower snapped due to the pressure and the stress of the bridge and the amount of traffic on the bridge. When this eye bolt or pin snapped, it caused the columns to turn, which therefore almost caused a domino effect. The collapse actually started on the Ohio side and moved towards the Point Pleasant side. All in all, it took probably maybe 2 to 3 minutes for the entire bridge structure to collapse into the river. Many of the people on the bridge died because of the debris and the structure, landing on top of the cars. And then, of course, the water in the Ohio River was extremely cold at that time of the year. So it was definitely a disaster that nobody was prepared for.
Can you just tell me, after the bridge fell, can you just talk about some of the damages? How many casualties were there? Were there any survivors? What was the reaction of people in the community? Did they want answers to this tragedy right away? Things like that.
Immediately after the Silver Bridge collapsed, the state and the Army Corps of Engineers, different people came in to investigate what caused the bridge to fall. The entire bridge was reconstructed in a local field to check and see what had caused the bridge to fall. But 46 people did perish in the bridge collapse. Numerous injuries from some of the people that were on the bridge. So it was a lasting effect. I mean, two of the people were never found. So with that many people dying that quickly, and the city was not prepared for that size of a disaster.
Can you tell me, after the investigation of the bridges conducted, what was found, what had caused the collapse? You told me just
right,
but just specifically.
Okay. After several years of inside investigation into the Silver Bridge collapse, the Corps of Engineers decided that it was actually an eighth of a piece of rust, eighth of an inch of rust inside one of the eye bolts that caused it to stress fracture and break apart. So they narrowed it down to that small of a piece of rust that caused the pin to snap, therefore the column turning, and then the bridge collapsing like dominoes.
Was the Silver Bridge almost kind of a cap for all these odd things that were happening before it? But at the same time, did it evoke more questions? Because, the Mothman, the UFOs, all that stuff kind of built up to it, and the bridge fell, and then that kind of stuff left. So was that kind of an ending to all of the strange things? But at the same time, did it pose questions too? Because did people acquaint it with the other things?
The Silver Bridge collapse was almost like a temporary lull in the Mothman sightings, because everybody that lived here, their attention obviously was not on the TNT area or the Mothman or the UFO sightings. It was on their loved ones and the people who died in the bridge collapse. Some people feel that there may have been a connection between the Silver Bridge collapse, the Men in Black, the Mothman sightings. Some people felt that it was not connected. Good old modest mufflers there. Isn't it funny, though, how you can sit out here in the middle of the night and it's just like everybody's got a noisy muffler, a bad fan belt, which, when I start my car up, that Honda Passport over, I don't know what's wrong with the fan belt, but you might want to tape it because it almost sounds like the Mothman. Yeah, it's like...
Well, those are pretty gross, so they get it.
Yeah, some groupies there, I guess, maybe. You're groupies there. You can go down here, one of the bars down there, and find some winners down there.
When the bridge fell, did it spurn more questions now about Mothman and UFOs because people associated the two?
Some people felt that the Mothman sightings were directly connected to the bridge collapse. There were reports of Men in Black walking across the bridge prior to the disaster. Some people even felt that there were reports of a large bird seen flying back and forth across the Ohio River. That's never been proven or documented or anything, but there may have been a connection somehow. A lot of that activity kind of faded away after the bridge collapse. There weren't near as many Mothman sightings as there were 5 or 6 months before.
There was a rumor that there was like a really large sonic boom or explosion sound before the bridge
I heard
fell.
it.
This would kind of, a lot of people, for people that don't believe the I-bar story, that think there was something else at hand there. A lot of people say that, the fact that there was kind of an explosive noise before the thing fell, that kind of adds to their theory of speculation of something else kind of sinister there. Can you talk about the sonic boom noise?
The only thing that I know about that is I remember hearing it, but I've never talked to anybody who that boom that I heard may have been, when it hit the water.
Okay. Yeah. Let me re-ask the question too, based on that. Can you tell me how old were you? Well, first
I was 6.
How old were you? You were 6?
Yeah.
Okay. So can you tell me, how old you are when the bridge fell, where you were, and tell me about him.
Yeah. I distinctly remember the day the bridge collapsed. I was about 6 years old and at home, about 6 miles, north of where the bridge was located. I was in the basement, playing, and I remember distinctly hearing a large, almost what sounded like a sonic boom. At that time, my father came downstairs and told me that we needed to go downtown. So it may have been a few minutes after that boom that he had heard word that something had happened to the bridge. Some people around here had heard that the bridge had fell, including my mother. She thought maybe just a part of the bridge had fell, maybe just, part of the ramp had fell off, but they didn't realize at the time that it was the entire bridge that had collapsed. So it took a little bit of time before people realized the magnitude of the disaster.
And do you think when people look at the story, we have Mothman, UFOs, Men in Black, if you could list those for me and then tell me, do you think people, when they look at this, do they look at these as all one big problem, or is it just coincidence? Or are they all related? I mean, do most people consider all those pieces of the same big, weird puzzle?
most people, local and worldwide investigators, feel that the Men in Black, the Mothman sightings, UFO sightings, and the Silver Bridge all play a vital role in the entire story as one, because it all happened at the same time, close proximity, and so there's maybe a direct relationship between all those. Without one, you wouldn't have the complete ball of wax. So my personal opinion is the fact that it all happened at the same time. There was a direct connection.
There were rumors that the Mothman was spotted just before the fall of the bridge. Can you tell me about that rumor? You know it? Have you heard it at all? You touched on it.
Yeah. There were a few reports from some of the locals that they had saw a large, dark bird flying across, the river, across the proximity of the bridge before the collapse. Also sightings of Men in Black in and around the bridge, climbing up and down on the bridge and things like that. The bridge was open to the public. Anybody could walk back and forth, but a few people reported seeing a couple of these Men in Black climbing up and down on sections of the bridge.
And do you think after the Silver Bridge fell, did most people accept and believe and buy the Ibar story, or because of all the weird things before it, did they seem to doubt that it was, explainable by kind of something grounded?
Most residents of Point Pleasant felt that the bridge collapse was attributed to the heavy traffic and the weakness of the bridge. The bridge was poorly maintained over the years. It was built in like 1927 or 1928. So that was the immediate reaction, is what caused the bridge collapse, was the fact that there were 2 lanes of traffic signals on both ends, and the massive weight on that bridge caused the collapse, which in essence, when the eye bolt snapped, the weight was the main factor that the bridge collapsed.
And did the collapse of the bridge stir up controversy about Mothman? Did it kind of divide the town at all? Because there were some people, acquainted, Mothman was warning the town about the bridge, or it caused the bridge. Did it stir up some controversy? Did the bridge, not obviously immediately after, because immediately after was more about dealing with the situation. Yeah. But later on, did that bridge collapse kind of make people start to rethink things?
That's something I really don't remember. Carolyn probably answered that. I don't. Okay. Since I was only 6, I don't remember, what people were actually saying. Right. So I'd hate to say that, they were saying that, and then somebody see me on TV saying, well, how could he say that? He was 5 or 6 years old.
Can you tell me, over when Mothman was starting to be spotted and throughout the years, a lot of people have had different theories of what it was. A mutated bird, an extraterrestrial animal, something government related, right? An angel, a demon. Right. Can you just list for me throughout the years what have some people theorized Mothman was?
Over the years, the Mothman has been connected with Thunderbird sightings. Some people felt that it was nothing but just a large sandhill crane. Others felt that it was a spiritual entity, almost like an angel or a demon, good and evil type apparition. Others felt that it was just a toxic creature formed by some of the toxic waste in the TNT area, a large bird that may have got into some chemicals. And then you have the people who felt it was nothing more than a couple high school kids wearing a costume.
Okay, we're almost done. Just a couple wrap-up questions.
Okay.
Do you think the mystery here will ever be solved, or is the case too complex? Is there too many difficult, factors here? Will the Mothman case kind of ever come to a close or be solved, in your opinion?
My personal opinion about the Mothman story is that it would probably never be completely solved, or a conclusion that's viable. Let me start again. Sure. Those cars usually distract me a little bit. I'm waiting for one. I'm just to wipe out the whole set, just come flying up there and just.
That'll be the end. Oh,
Okay.
man. I was thinking about that too before.
Is he going to get out?
Yeah.
My personal opinion on the Mothman story is it will probably never be solved. It's an open book. There's too many ifs and too many theories out there. But it's just such a complex story. It happened 40 years ago, but there's even activity going on today in other parts of the world or country. So it's just one of those fascinating, unexplainable stories that has caught the attention of the world. Point Pleasant was under the spotlight from day one on November 15th, 1966. And even today, people are still, looking for the Mothman.
Do you have any theory on what the meaning or purpose of it was at all?
Actually, no. I've never been able to, to really, I've never looked into it from that angle. People come up to me and once in a while say, I know them guys that were dressed up like it, but I welcome that too. I mean, I like to see some outfits or pictures or whatever, If somebody could come along and prove all that and say, here's who did it. I'm sure there was some hoaxing going on after the initial sightings,
Yeah. I've come across a theory.
Yeah.
Where people are like,
oh yeah,
the guy who it was.
They always say, but see, I looked into the credibility of a lot of those people. My mother knew Linda Scarborough and her family. I mean, she told me point blank, she didn't drink, she didn't smoke, she wasn't a partier.
Yeah.
Look at her high school senior picture. Yeah. I mean, she's like, the epitome of the high school sweetheart. Now, after all that started, I think that's when she kind of went downhill from there.
Well, a lot of people I talk to, it's like, well, I know the guy who was faking it. But then I think that's one person. Then you talk to someone else, and like, well, then you know what I mean. So like, there's been like 15 different people.
Most of those people want a piece of the recognition. Right. Oh, I knew them guys that were doing it. And another thing you'll run into too, and it's everybody that I've ever talked to is like, yeah, I had just went across that bridge before it fell. everybody I've ever talked to, I had just come on. My mother, my grandma, even Donnie said that in the book, in the first book.
The Trade Center in New York.
Yeah, exactly. I was in the Trade Center 5 minutes before it blew up.
Yeah, it's the same thing.
I know, but it's the fact that they want to be involved in the story. You know what I mean? They want people to say, well, you're from Point Pleasant. Do you have any direct connections? Yeah, I'd went right across that bridge before it fell.
So can you tell me a little bit about the festival that you're a part of, the Mothman Festival? And I think one thing that's interesting about it is, people in Point Pleasant, West Virginia, seem to be pretty strong people. Like, people in this town have had to deal with a lot of hardships and floods and fires and economy and business and things like that. But they kind of like roll with the punches. And I think Mothman Festival is almost symbolic of that too, because these are things. A lot of things we're kind of dealing with are things that were feared by people in tragedy, and then today it's kind of it's celebrated to a degree, and it's nice, I think, to a degree where it's like we've taken kind of something scary and fearful
and embracing it,
embrace it, and tragic even. And it's just kind of a way to even.
Well, we don't try to exploit the bridge collapse or anything like that, but I mean, it's part of the story.
It's a way to bring people here. To And in that, it remembers those people and makes it aware. So it's kind of like it's almost like a happy ending, to a degree, if there can be. So can you talk a little bit about that?
Over the years, people here in Point Pleasant and the surrounding areas have kind of embraced the Mothman story. Every year, we have a Mothman Festival here in downtown Point Pleasant. We invite people who believe in the legend and people that don't believe in the legend. We're not trying to convince anybody of what this thing was, but it can't be ignored. I mean, it was part of it and is part of Point Pleasant's history, just like Chief Cornstalk and some of the historical events that went on here. So it's a fun time for everybody to come along. They can make their own conclusion. We have guest speakers, we have authors, we have film crews that come. But everybody's still interested in the Mothman story. They want to see for themselves where it happened, what happened, maybe even get a chance to talk to somebody who encountered it firsthand. So the curiosity aspect of it is just worldwide.
And can you talk a little bit about the kind of the taking something old and maybe, I don't know what the right word is, not
reinventing.
Yeah, well, it's kind of taking something that is not the most positive thing in the world and making it something, fun. Like you said, I think to like embrace it and kind of just like it almost like makes a happy ending to the story, because a lot of people, if there, I think without that festival, it's just left with something that scared the shit out of people, bothered people, traumatized people.
Right, but it never harmed anybody physically.
Right. But it's kind of a nice, I think, way to wrap it all up. And the thing is too, if that brings people to the town to learn about it, then ultimately that's the best thing.
40 years ago, when the Mothman sightings, were happening, people were, traumatized mentally. No one was ever physically harmed. The Mothman Festival is a way of almost a closure, to those events, and bringing people here to Point Pleasant to learn, for themselves what happened, and to experience, the town, check out some of the different sites and see maybe the TNT area, the different museums, and meet some of the people that were involved in the story. I mean, many of the people still live here. Some refuse to talk about it even today, but chances are, if you walk into a local diner, you're going to run into somebody who saw the Mothman.
Okay, is there anything else that you think that I forgot that's important?
Maybe just something about the witnesses and how they deserve the respect and something.
Sure. Okay.
I always
kind
of
now or then?
Then and now. Yeah.
Okay. The witnesses, when they came forward with their story, they well knew that they had everything to lose as opposed to everything to gain. Yeah. And sometimes that gets forgotten. Yeah. And it needs to be reminded where, they weren't out for fortune and glory and things like that. If anything, they knew that they were going to be ridiculed. I mean, but people were not going to believe them. But they still came forward with their story, which I think is an indication of their experience. Can you tell me about that?
Most people need to realize in 1966 it was a different time. For someone to go to the local authorities and report seeing a 7-foot man with red eyes and wings definitely took a lot of courage. So I've always respected the honesty of some of the people that I've interviewed and talked to. So I've always felt that they deserve more credit than what they have received. I mean, even today, people will laugh or make fun of them. So I don't think that that there was 100 people making up that same story. What it was, who will ever know? A large bird, a sandhill crane, a vision from another realm, whatever. But, these people did see something. It just remains unexplained, till today of what it was that they saw. But it definitely took a lot of courage and to go to the police or their friends or their neighbors or parents and explain what they had saw.
Anything else that you think I forgot that's important to the whole story?
No, let's pretty much covered everything. I mean,
All right, cool. All right, then I think we're a little bit exhausted.
We hope you enjoyed this episode of Eyes of the Mothman, the podcast. For more information about our program, or to find out where you can watch the original documentary film or purchase a limited edition signed DVD copy, please visit www.eyesofthemothman.com.